The invitation arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, slipped beneath Olivia Chen's apartment door like a poisonous whisper from her past. Cream-colored cardstock, embossed with gold lettering that screamed expensive taste and careful planning. Her hands trembled as she read the elegant script. Mr. Marcus Wellington and Miss Victoria Ashford request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Marcus Wellington. The name alone sent waves of contradictory emotions crashing through her. Rage, grief, and something darker she didn't want to name. 3 years had passed since that night, since the betrayal that had shattered her world into pieces so small. She'd wondered if she'd ever put herself back together. But she had. Oh, she had. Behind her, 3 toddlers played on the living room floor, their laughter filling the modest apartment with warmth. Emma, Ethan, and Evan, her triplets, her everything, her strength made flesh. They had just turned 2 years old, with Marcus's distinctive dark hair and his sharp, intelligent eyes. Eyes that would never know their father had rejected them before they'd even drawn their first breath. Olivia stared at the invitation, turning it over in her hands. This wasn't a genuine gesture of reconciliation or closure. This was calculated cruelty, a final twist of the knife. Victoria Ashford, Marcus's former secretary, the woman he'd been sleeping with while promising Olivia forever, would know exactly what this invitation represented. They wanted her there to witness her replacement, to see what she'd lost, to feel small and broken. They had no idea what they'd actually invited into their carefully orchestrated celebration. "Mama!" Emma toddled over, her chubby hands reaching up. Olivia scooped her daughter into her arms, breathing in the sweet scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "It's nothing, sweetheart," Olivia murmured. But even as she spoke, her mind was already turning, calculating. A plan was forming, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She would attend the wedding, but not as the broken, desperate woman Marcus had discarded. She would walk in as the woman she'd become, stronger, wiser, and holding the truth that would detonate their perfect day like a bomb. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Olivia called her sister, Rachel, who listened to the plan with growing amazement and concern. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Rachel asked over the phone, her voice tight with worry. "Liv, this could backfire. They're powerful people. Marcus's family practically owns half the city's real estate." "I'm sure," Olivia replied, her voice steady in a way it hadn't been in years. "I'm not doing this for revenge, not really. I'm doing this because those children deserve to know their father exists, and Marcus deserves to face what he ran from." Rachel sighed. "Okay, but you're not going alone. I'll be there, and I'm bringing reinforcements." Olivia smiled, grateful for her sister's fierce loyalty. "Thank you." The hardest part was explaining to her lawyer, David Morrison, what she intended to do. David had handled her case 3 years ago when she desperately tried to get Marcus to acknowledge the pregnancy. He'd witnessed the paternity test results, the legal documentation, all of it dismissed by Marcus's high-powered attorneys with threats and cold indifference. "You have legal grounds," David confirmed when she outlined her intentions. "The paternity is established even if he's refused to acknowledge it. But Olivia confronting him publicly at his wedding? That's not a legal strategy, that's personal." "I know," she said quietly. "But legal strategies failed us before. Maybe it's time for the personal approach." David was silent for a long moment. "I'll be at that wedding too. In case things go sideways, you'll have legal representation present. And Liv, for what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave." The wedding was held at the Grandview Estate, a sprawling venue overlooking the city's skyline. As Olivia's car pulled up to the valet station, she could see the opulence on display. White roses climbing marble columns, champagne fountains, a string quartet playing something classical and pretentious. Rachel sat beside her in the back of the hired car, dressed in a sharp navy suit. In the row behind them, David Morrison checked his briefcase one final time. And in the car following theirs, Olivia's mother and aunt sat with the triplets, ready to make their entrance when the moment was right. "You look stunning," Rachel said, squeezing Olivia's hand. Olivia glanced down at her dress, a flowing emerald gown that hugged her figure before cascading to the floor. She'd chosen it deliberately, wanting to look powerful and elegant, not like someone seeking pity. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate style, and she wore the diamond earrings her grandmother had left her, her only real jewelry. "I feel like I'm going into battle," Olivia admitted. "You are," Rachel replied, "but you're going to win." They entered the venue, showing their invitations to the attendants at the door. Olivia noticed the subtle double takes, the whispered conversations that rippled through the crowd as she made her way to her seat. Some people recognized her from 3 years ago, from the society pages when she and Marcus had been the golden couple everyone envied. The ceremony was held in a garden pavilion draped with white silk. Olivia chose a seat near the middle, close enough to be visible but not so close as to cause immediate disruption. As more guests arrived, she recognized faces from her past. Marcus's business associates, society friends who dropped her the moment the scandal broke, people who'd chosen sides without hearing her story. Then Marcus appeared, walking down the aisle to take his position at the altar. He looked exactly as she remembered, tall, devastatingly handsome in his tailored tuxedo, with that confident bearing that had first attracted her. But now she could see the arrogance beneath the charm, the entitlement in the way he smiled at his guests. His eyes swept the crowd and froze when they landed on her. For just a moment, genuine shock registered on his face. Color drained from his cheeks. He hadn't believed she'd actually come. Olivia met his gaze steadily, her face a mask of calm composure, and watched as confusion gave way to something like fear. Good. He should be afraid. The music swelled, and Victoria began her walk down the aisle. She was beautiful, Olivia had to admit. Blonde, delicate, dressed in a gown that probably cost more than Olivia's entire year's rent. Victoria's smile was radiant, completely oblivious to the bomb about to explode her perfect day. The ceremony proceeded with all the traditional elements. The officiant spoke about love and commitment and sacred bonds, words that rang hollow in Olivia's ears. She'd heard similar promises from Marcus once, before he'd shattered them without a second thought. If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace, the officiant intoned, the traditional words falling into the garden like stones into still water. Olivia stood. The movement was smooth, deliberate. Heads turned toward her like a wave. Gasps rippled through the assembled guests. At the altar, Marcus's face had gone from shocked to furious, while Victoria looked utterly bewildered. "I object," Olivia said clearly, her voice carrying across the pavilion. "And I have very good reasons. This is outrageous." Marcus's mother, Constance Wellington, surged to her feet from the front row. "Security, remove this woman immediately." "I wouldn't do that if I were you," David Morrison said, rising from his seat and pulling out his briefcase. "Ms. Chen has legal standing to be here, and what she has to say is a matter of public record." The officiant looked between them uncertainly. "Perhaps we should—" "Please let her speak," Olivia heard someone say. She turned, surprised, to find Marcus's father, Richard Wellington, standing with one hand raised. His face was grave but curious. "I'd like to hear what this young woman has to say." Constance looked appalled. "Richard, you can't be serious." "I am completely serious," Richard replied, his voice firm. "Proceed, Ms. Chen." Olivia took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was it. The moment she'd been planning for, dreading, and desperately needing for 3 years. 3 years ago, she began, her voice clear and steady. Marcus Wellington and I were in a relationship. We'd been together for 2 years. He'd proposed to me, given me a ring, introduced me to his family. We were planning our future together. She could see Marcus shaking his head, his hands clenched into fists, but she continued. Then I discovered I was pregnant. Not with one child, but with triplets. When I told Marcus, he was less than supportive. A bitter laugh escaped her. Actually, that's an understatement. He accused me of trying to trap him, demanded I terminate the pregnancy, and when I refused, he disappeared from my life entirely. "That's a lie!" Marcus shouted. "You were unstable, obsessed. I had to get a restraining order." "You did try to get a restraining order," Olivia acknowledged. "It was denied because I had evidence, text messages, emails, voicemails, of you harassing me to get an abortion. The judge called your petition frivolous and malicious." David Morrison held up a folder. "I have copies of all court documents here, if anyone would like to verify." Victoria had gone pale, her hand at her throat. "Marcus, what is she talking about?" "She's lying, darling," Marcus said desperately. "This woman stalked me for months. I also have the paternity test results," Olivia interrupted. "Conducted by an independent laboratory, court-ordered, which conclusively prove that Marcus Wellington is the biological father of my children." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Constance Wellington looked like she might faint. Richard's face had darkened with fury, but Olivia couldn't tell if it was directed at her or his son. "You have children?" Victoria whispered. "Marcus, you have children?" She's lying. Those tests were faked." Marcus's composure was crumbling, his perfect facade cracking apart. The laboratory is willing to testify to their authenticity, David said calmly, as is the judge who ordered them. Mr. Wellington has not only refused to acknowledge his children, but he's also paid no child support, provided no medical coverage, and made no attempt to be involved in their lives whatsoever. Olivia felt tears threatening, but forced them back. She hadn't come this far to cry now. I didn't come here seeking money or trying to destroy your happiness, Victoria. I came because those children deserve better than a father who pretends they don't exist, and because I wanted Marcus to see exactly what he abandoned. She turned toward the entrance of the pavilion and nodded. Her mother appeared, pushing a custom triple stroller decorated with white ribbons. Emma, Ethan, and Evan sat inside, dressed in their best clothes, looking around at the crowd with wide, curious eyes. The silence that fell was absolute. Olivia walked down the aisle and lifted Emma from the stroller, then returned to face Marcus. Her daughter looked at the man who was her father with innocent curiosity, reaching out one small hand. "This is Emma," Olivia said softly. "And those are Ethan and Evan. They're 2 years old. They love music and dinosaurs and making towers out of blocks. Emma wants to be a doctor. Ethan won't go to sleep without his stuffed elephant. Evan laughs at everything." She took a step closer, and Marcus actually stepped back, his face a mask of horror and something that might have been guilt. "They have your eyes, Marcus, your smile, your grandfather's dimples. They're brilliant and beautiful, and they're yours, whether you acknowledge them or not." "I can't, this isn't," Marcus stammered, looking desperately at Victoria, at his parents, at anyone who might save him from this moment. But Victoria was backing away, shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. "You told me there was no one else. You said that woman was crazy, that she was obsessed with you. You lied to me." "Victoria, please, you have children!" Victoria's voice rose to a shout. 3 children! And you were going to marry me without ever telling me?" Richard Wellington strode forward, his face thunderous. He looked at the triplets, then at Marcus, then back at the children. When Ethan gave him a gummy smile, something in Richard's expression cracked. "My God," he breathed. "They do have the Wellington eyes. Marcus, what have you done?" "Father, I can explain. You can explain how you abandoned 3 innocent children? How you denied your own flesh and blood?" Richard's voice shook with rage. "How you lied to everyone, including the woman you were about to marry?" Constance had moved to the stroller, staring down at Ethan and Evan with a complex expression. Shock, anger, but also something that might have been longing. "These are my grandchildren," she said faintly. 3 years old, and I never knew." Olivia watched it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. She'd expected anger, denial, even violence. She hadn't expected this. The family fracturing before her eyes, the truth creating fissures that couldn't be repaired. Victoria removed her engagement ring and threw it at Marcus's feet. "We're done. We're so completely done." "How could you? How could you be so cruel to her, to them, to me?" "Victoria, wait!" Marcus lunged after her, but she was already running, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a banner of defeat. The guests were in chaos now, some standing, others whispering frantically, everyone trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Olivia saw phones out, knew this would be all over social media within hours. The Wellington family scandal would be the talk of the city for months. Richard approached Olivia, and she instinctively held Emma closer, but his expression had softened. "Ms. Chen," he said quietly, "I am profoundly sorry for what my son has put you through. If I had known, if anyone had told me." He looked at Emma, and his eyes glistened with unshed tears. "May I?" Olivia hesitated, then carefully handed Emma to her grandfather. Richard held the little girl awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. Emma, fearless as always, patted his cheek and said, "Hi." "Hello, sweetheart," Richard whispered. "I'm your grandpa." Constance had lifted Evan from the stroller, tears streaming down her face. "They're beautiful," she said to Olivia. "I'm so sorry. I'm so terribly sorry for what you've endured alone." Olivia felt her own tears finally fall. This wasn't how she'd imagined this moment. She'd expected a battle, a confrontation, not this unexpected tenderness from people she'd thought would be her enemies. Marcus stood alone at the altar, his perfect wedding in ruins around him, watching his parents hold the children he'd rejected. The look on his face was devastating. Regret, shame, loss, all warring for dominance. "Olivia," he said, his voice breaking, "I was wrong. I was so wrong. I was scared and selfish, and I destroyed everything. I destroyed us. She looked at him, this man who'd once been her whole world, who'd given her the greatest gifts of her life, even as he'd shattered her heart. You did, she agreed quietly. But I survived. They survived. And we're better off without someone who could abandon us so easily. I want to make this right, Marcus said desperately. Please, let me try to make this right. You can start by signing the child support documents your lawyer has been ignoring for 2 years, David Morrison interjected, pulling papers from his briefcase. And by establishing a formal custody agreement. These children deserve financial support and the option of a relationship with their father, if and when they choose it. Richard nodded firmly. He'll sign everything, tonight. And there will be a substantial retroactive payment for all the support that should have been provided from the beginning. Olivia looked at her triplets, now surrounded by their grandparents, Rachel and her mother. They looked happy, secure, loved. Whatever happened next, they would be okay. They would always be okay because she would make sure of it. I didn't come here to destroy your wedding, Olivia said to Marcus. I came here to make sure my children are acknowledged and provided for. I came here to demand the basic respect and recognition we deserved 3 years ago. If your wedding was destroyed, that's on you, not me. She turned to Rachel. Let's go home. As they gathered the children and prepared to leave, Olivia felt lighter than she had in years. The weight of secrecy, of shame, of fighting alone, it was finally lifting. Her children had grandparents now, whether she'd planned for it or not. They had legal recognition, financial security, and most importantly, the truth was out. She paused at the pavilion entrance and looked back one last time. Marcus was on his knees, surrounded by the wreckage of his carefully constructed lie. His parents stood with her children, already falling in love with the grandchildren they'd been denied. The guests were in chaos, the wedding completely abandoned. And Olivia Chen walked out with her head held high, her triplets secure in the arms of people who already loved them, and the satisfaction of knowing that justice, messy and complicated as it was, had finally been served. The invitation had been meant to humiliate her, to remind her of everything she'd lost. Instead, she'd walked in with the truth and watched their perfect illusion crumble. She hadn't just destroyed a wedding. She'd demolished the lies that had kept her children from their family and forced a reckoning that was 3 years overdue. As she buckled Emma, Ethan, and Evan into their car seats, each of them babbling excitedly about the big party, Olivia smiled. Whatever came next, custody battles, family negotiations, the media storm, she would face it as she'd faced everything else since that devastating night 3 years ago. With strength, dignity, and the unshakable love of a mother who'd never stopped fighting for her children. She had walked into that wedding expecting confrontation. She left with something far more valuable: vindication, recognition, and the beginning of a future where her children would never have to wonder if they were wanted. Sometimes revenge wasn't about destruction. Sometimes it was simply about demanding the truth and refusing to be silenced anymore. And in that truth, she'd found something she thought she'd lost forever: her power.